Welcome back to the class, everyone. Today we are going to be going over modding once again and actually plugging away at our series Speed And. Basically what the point of this series is, where when you roll a mod and it's not a speed set, but it has a tremendous amount of speed. We've already covered offense sets and crit damage sets, showing kind of characters in general that could really benefit from all the speed but don't necessarily want a speed set. CLS is an option that we saw for offense, and then you can actually continue to see the 5 options as well that we have for crit damage. In today's mod set that we're going to be working with is going to be tenacity. So we're looking at characters that for whatever reason, want to take a lot of turns to be able to do what they do. Speed is typically important across all characters, but on top of that, also characters that want to have a lot of tenacity for one reason or another, whether it's something directly in their kit or if it's really relevant to a counter that they're a part of. So first up is actually going to be Wampa, and Wampa is not a character that needs a tremendous amount of speed, but he does need a little bit to make sure he doesn't get lapped too many times before he can get back to using his icebreaker in case they get some type of detrimental debuff on him that keeps him from countering in the very beginning. The most prevalent match this is going to be Star Killer, and there's actually something I should mention that is going to differentiate a little bit this set from the last two, and that is, and this is actually going to be all of them going forward, offense and crit damage. They require 4 mods to complete one set. Tenacity is the first mod set we're going to be looking at that actually only requires 2, and what that means is a lot of the characters that we're looking at, not all of them, but a lot of them, aren't necessarily going to benefit from a full 6 tenacity. In fact, you can see here on Wampa, Wampa actually only has 1 tenacity set. So again, coming back to this, Wampa does want a small amount of speed. He doesn't need anything crazy. You can see here that we mostly have plus 10s. I guess we have 1 plus 20 on him, but also that's honestly really for the tenacity here as well. And a lot of people question this a lot. I get this question very frequently in both streams and in other YouTube videos. Why do you have tenacity on your Wampa if he is going to get pretty much unlimited tenacity? Number one, he's starting with 100%, but he also gains 25, or is it 30% 30% every single time he's hit. The reason why this is so important is because if you're using Wampa to his fullest extent and beating the highest level teams he is, in 3v3, the best team that he's currently beating is Starkiller with Mara Jade as well as Emperor Palpatine. And if Mara Jade lands the initial stun, which comes before the tenacity down, you're just entirely done. And Mara Jade does have a lot of potency, not only from her own kit, but also from Emperor Palpatine's lead. So you have to be able to counteract that with a decent amount of tenacity. Where I have stopped is essentially 129%. In a perfect world with different secondaries and maybe another tenacity set, 140 is really where I would like to cap out at, and that really cuts out any Mara Jade ever landing that initial stun. A little bit less important, but was very relevant when Wampa first came out, was actually Iden as well. Iden would go first, she would land her initial stun, and if she could land it, then there was enough damage for the rest of the team for them just to kill him. And the reason why the stuns are so detrimental to Wampa is because he can't counter. If he can't counter, he can't use his basic. If he can't use his basic, he can't gain turn meter. If he can't gain turn meter, he can't take a turn. Which again, goes back to this theme of you want him to be tenacious, and you also don't want him to be freakishly slow. So that is Wampa. We spent a good minute on him. Next up is actually going to be Jolie. And Jolie, like we said earlier, this is a character that not only can use tenacity, you know, it's not great to have him stunned or dazed or whatever, but on top of that, he is going to be doubling up on tenacity into another stat. So Jolie has 100% tenacity at the very beginning. He's immune to turn meter effects, as well as, in addition, at the start of the battle, he gains bonus critical avoidance equal to half of his tenacity. Jolie is one of the most important characters when he's on the Jedi team, because if he doesn't go down, he can bring everyone back, and this is really nice for the team. So you want him to be as tanky as possible, and one of the ways to get him to be as tanky as possible is to make him essentially immune to crits. So when you just put a little bit of tenacity, like one set, I think maybe we have the primary on him as well. If you can get just those 2, then you can get him up to about 120%. That 120% mixed with the other 100% he has, you can get him to the point where he's not going to be able to be crit. He has a pretty much 100 crit avoidance just with that one set. And I do like him to have a decent amount of speed, just because, especially with the JML versus JMK match, you can't really gain any turn meter, and if Jolie isn't taking turns, he isn't reviving anyone. You have to eventually get back to this. Most of the time, you can't actually just keep calling Jolie to assist for his basics to reduce that cooldown, but at the end of the day, he has to take a turn to be able to call him in. So, again, not a character that needs speed to the point where you should have a speed set on him, but a tenacity set at a minimum to be able to get him into that critical avoidance area is very good. Next up is going to be Chewbacca, and Chewbacca is actually one that I do for the most part recommend a full 3 sets on. Chewbacca is the linchpin, kind of similar to Jolie for the CLS team. Once Chewbacca goes down, pretty much the whole entire team goes down. And one of the most important factors of Chewbacca is the fact that he's really the healer for your CLS team. Every single time that he's assisting at a turn, he's recovering 3% health and protection for each hit, by the way, so that'll get doubled up on things like the AoE. And once he goes down, then the other rest of the teams can be crit and whatnot. So you don't want him to be, number one, dead, which is bad. But on top of that, you also don't want him to be dazed or stunned. Because if he gets dazed or stunned by gas or whatever it is, or even General Grievous landing target lock on him very easily, that's a pretty popular counter for CLS on defense, then he gets taken control of and they just take him down. So actually, we have him loaded up with as much tenacity as possible. He's at about 165%. You can get a little bit higher than that, but you start to have to sacrifice some other stats. And that really does help gas from dazing him. It does deter a little bit General Grievous's target locks because they want to take him down because otherwise he'll counter and everything like that. So, and you do want, again, a decent amount of speed on him. Nothing crazy, not enough to ward a speed set, just so that he can actually get back to taking a turn, so that he can use one of his own abilities and, again, heal the team, as well as, actually, a lot of this stuff is pretty useful. His AoE for the Dispel, CLS doesn't really have that. Well, I guess Chewbacca has that as well, but it's kind of the same idea there, as well as Pulverize, or his Furious Bowcaster is also really good. So, fantastic character, can definitely use the tenacity and the speed. Next up is Hux, and Hux is going to be going back to the theme that we were talking about before, where he doesn't need a full 6 mods of tenacity to be worth it. And one of the actually really nice things about Hux, and we've seen this on some of the other characters, is his base tenacity is already really high. He starts out with about 100% to go off of in the beginning, and that's great. And that really means for anyone to have a really solid shot at getting him debuffed, they have to actually have over 100% potency as well. They can still land it before that, but they start to lose a little bit of possibility in the RNG there. So realistically, if I could, I should actually have a tenacity primary. It looks like I'm opting for speed in this case, but not a character. I've seen some people do this and I actually don't hate it. If you have like plus 25s to give Hux that are full tenacity, I don't, as you can see from my plus 24 here. So we just do 1 speed set and 1 tenacity, but as much as you can get on him as possible is really helpful, because that's going to help pretty much all the Jedi comps that go against him that either want to ability block him in some way or form, with either Jedi Master Luke, Old Ben, Bastila, what have you, because being able to stop that and him being able to pass back a turn to SLKR, so SLKR doesn't have to be modded for tenacity, which is really just folly in a lot of different ways, but it's really the purpose that he serves, and it helps even more as well on the other teams, because he's the one who's going to get you out of he's going to one that's going to get you out of a jam by giving this either to a character that can cleanse or that can just kill the enemy. So Hux is, again, a very good option, not for necessarily to have full tenacity. You can do that, but I think he goes really well with the speed set as well. Up next is actually going to be Bossk. Bossk is this, and this one I probably should make it really clear. Speed is first and foremost on him. I do like the tenacity, especially probably more towards the mid game and the beginning game, just because he's already getting a fair amount from his kit, and the way that his unique Zeta works is if whenever he loses taunt, he gains it back if the weakest enemy still has protection. And what can ultimately thwart this is if someone lands shock or buff immunity or confuse, or one of the other buffs that does that. I guess doubt does it too, that stops buffs coming in. If they land that on him, the taunt actually doesn't keep coming back, because he'll lose it, and the shock will prevent it from actually getting back on him. So if any of them get all that stuff on him, he's not going to be able to taunt. He's not going to be nearly as effective as he was before. But at the end of the day, this is the character that you want fast. Bounty hunters want to go first, and they have a number of ways that they can do it. They have the turn meter from Mando. They have pretty good speeds on Bossk and Grieve. You can use Django lead, Zam's Omicron. They have ways to go fast, but you still really want them to go fast all the time. So again, Bossk does have viability for tenacity. It is very nice in stopping a lot of the things that the enemy wants to do to you. But at the same time, I need to be clear, don't sacrifice speed. He needs to be, if you're wanting to use him to his fullest extent, he needs to have a speed set on top of it. I actually really like our modding for him. We have a tenacity set as well as a tenacity primary. And then again, just try to get as much speed on the secondaries as possible. It looks like we have a handful of plus 20. So again, these are the 5 characters that you can use on your roster that will be able to take tenacity set mods, but also really fast ones, and use them to a great extent. So that is going to be it for today. Thank you guys for watching. As always, stay awesome.